Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome. I hope everyone is doing well. I hope everyone had a great weekend. Welcome to the exam review. Looking forward to spending some time with everyone tonight, answering your questions, talking history. I'm sure everyone is looking forward to spending Sunday night um, watching me and watching the history. I'm sure everyone's looking forward to spending watching all of everyone's answers being discussed. And yeah, um, I think it's I think the best way to start is just to go over. I've already gotten a bunch of your questions, and which is great. I think the best way to start, and we'll address a lot of your questions, and a lot of your questions are very similar to each other. So if I don't address yours specifically, a lot of the questions are very similar. So let me first address, first of all, the structure of the test for both the H and the A. And as I said in class, when there's a difference between the H and the A, I'll mention them so it's very clear what material, what content is on the H and what content is on the A exam. But in regards to the the structure of the exam, first of all, the first part will be on the reading for both. The reading is up on Haiku. It has been since Friday. And the first part of the exam will be on the reading. You'll have questions both that ask you to analyze the reading, that ask you reading comprehension questions, and you also have questions which combine sort of knowledge based in class, what you gain from the textbook, is with the reading. And then the second part, you have a series of questions where you are being asked to take the contents from what we learned in class to think about it in new and different ways, in ways that you may not have appreciated, to compare, to contrast, to find continuities, to find changes, to find similarities, to find differences. Obviously, in your answers, you need to provide details. The question of what the details are, how many details some of you have asked me. For instance, do we need to know dates? Dates you need to know. You need to know in regards to dates is not whether in 1517 Luther did this or in 1555 this happens. If you mess up a little bit on a date, nothing's going to happen to you. If you mess up on a date, then if you tell me that the Peace of Augsburg was in 1540, not 1555, then nothing is going to happen. If you tell me that the Peace of Augsburg was in the middle of the 16th century, that's perfectly fine. If you tell me that the Peace of Augsburg took place in the 19th century, then that's going to be marked incorrect. Dates are important in that they provide a chronology of the material, the narrative that we learned, and it gives you a sense of structure. It gives you a sense of how to place items one after the next. So again, sorry, I'm just getting a lot of text messages from some of your fellow teachers, Mr. Kastner and Mrs. Feldblum. So again, it gives you chronology, it gives you structure, it gives you dates. And I think that's important. So that's what you need to know in terms of details, in terms of dates. So the second part is going to ask you to take what we learned in class, what we read in the textbook, and to think about it, and to offer answers, and trying to understand the nature of the material that we were learning. In many regards, the answers that you provide, there are going to be multiple answers to what you provide. There isn't going to be one specific or one particular answer. There are going to be multiple answers to the questions that that I ask, and that's fine, and that's expected. So you will be able to offer different answers. There's obviously going to be partial credit, and so yeah, so that's perfectly fine. Jessica, do you want to say hi?
Hi guys, you're gonna do awesome.
If anyone, guys, you know that my wife is a Frisch alum.
Frisch is awesome.
So my question to you guys, and maybe you can answer, is Which of the current faculty did Jessica graduate with?
Mm.
That's a good question.
Final Jeopardy.
You'll have to end the year. End the year. Okay. But anyway, getting back to it. The let's see. What is this? Okay, there we go. That's better, I think. I don't know. Something's going on here. Okay, so let's see. Mr. Castor and Mrs. Feldman were texting me, so I'm just going to text them back. Let's see. What should I write to them? Hi, guys. On Google Hangout with my 10th grade classes reviewing for exam. Anything you want to say to them? Okay. Fun stuff. Okay. Let's get to some of the questions. Questions are coming in a lot. So let's take a look at some of these questions here. One of the major questions, and this is something for the honors, and this is something that for the honors class, which again, not for the A-level class, but for the honors class. I want to just talk very quickly about what you need to know about the 30 Years' War. Let's see. What you need to know, we didn't go through the 30 Years' War in class. We didn't go through any of the wars of religion in class. What I want you to just to know about the 30 Years' War, again, details you don't need to know, and you don't need to memorize all of the specific individuals associated with the war. What you need to know, first of all, is really the cause of the war, which is the fact that the Holy Roman Empire, even after the Peace of Augsburg, into the beginning of the 17th century, was very decentralized. It was very fragmented. There was no centralized religion. Let's see. Mr. Kastner's writing back here. He says that tell them to do really well, and they'll all do really well. Anyway, okay. Anyway, with the 30 Years' War, again, the focus is not to know all of the details, but to know the causes. First of all, the fragmentation of the Holy Roman Empire, the fact that Calvinists didn't have a place in the Holy Roman Empire. This leads to difficulties, particularly in one of the principalities of the Holy Roman Empire, in the Palatine. What you should know really are the very basic details of the 4 stages of the war, beginning with the Bohemian stage, and simply the fact that the Bohemian stage was again, a religious conflict between the Bohemians, the Protestants in Bohemia, and the difficulty between Bohemia and the Palatine, 2 different parts of the Holy Roman Empire, in which the Catholics emerged victorious. Again, the Danish period, which is the second period where Denmark invades, they eventually lose. They lose to the Bohemians. They lose to Germany in terms of they lose to the Catholics in Germany. The Swedes are successful. The King of Sweden is able to bring his army, and with the support of France, he's able to with the support of France, the Swedish army is able to attack and have success against the various Catholic armies. And then finally, the Swedish Franco phase, where France openly becomes part of the war, the Swedish-Frankish phase, which basically decimated Germany between 1635 and 1648. That's basically the structure that you need to know. The fact that the 30 Years' War was a terrible, terrible, terrible event for the Holy Roman Empire, sets it apart for years and years to come. The conclusion of the Holy Roman Empire, the Treaty of Westphalia, this basically asserted the legality of the Peace of Augsburg, which was instituted almost 100 years beforehand. It solidified the independence of the Netherlands and of Switzerland, basically. This is basically it. Germany continues to be fragmented, or the Holy Roman Empire continues to be fragmented following the treaty. Germany did not become a unified nation until the 19th century, and the continual religious battle between the two continued to exist between the Protestants and the Catholics, and continue to exist between the two through the 19th century. So that's one. That really is what you should know in terms of the general structure of the 30 Years' War. Okay, so I think that answers a lot of the questions about the 30 Years' War. Question here from Eric, and I was asked to give shout outs to different people tonight. The first shout out, and some of you are going to be thrilled by this, and some of you are not, but the first shout out goes out to Joey. Joey Strobel, I hope you're watching, and if you're not watching, then this shout out doesn't really mean anything. But anyway, Eric asks if the video gets 100 likes, can you get extra credit? This is what I said last time. If the video between now and Wednesday gets 100,000 views, then you'll get and Jessica's laughing. Then you'll each get 10 extra points on the exam. So 100,000 views. That's a lot of people. I don't think between the three classes, 100,000 people and 100,000 views. But try it. 100,000 views. Oh my gosh. Anyway, I don't think that's really going to happen. Okay, let's take some more questions here. Let's see. Just going through some of the questions in email. Okay, so the Catholic Counter-Reformation. A couple of you asked about the Catholic Counter-Reformation. We did a couple of things with regards to the Catholic Counter-Reformation. First of all, the Council of Trent was the response of the Catholic Church to the Protestant Reformation. Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, urged the Pope to call this meeting of the Church to basically respond to the various accusations of the Protestant Church. The Council of Trent met for almost 20 years in the northern Italian city of Trent, and the focus was really the conclusion of the council. And the council, as a body, didn't meet every day, but there were various committees, and the committees issued reports in regards to a whole bunch of topics, whether it was marriage, whether it was indulgences, whether it was issues of faith, issues of dogma. The church basically reaffirmed everything that it had believed before. It made no substantive changes to Christian dogma. It continued to believe in the necessity of indulgences. It continued to believe in the primacy of the Pope, of the Bible, all of those important things that the Catholic that Martin Luther was railing against and arguing against. So the only real changes that the Council of Trent made was were changes that required priests to be in their parishes on a weekly basis, that they dressed well, that they were able to actually give sermons on the Bible. These were cosmetic. These were cosmetic changes. Changes which didn't provide any real structural change to the church, but put an emphasis in trying to maintain the church's stronghold and stability on the various communities. So that was the Council of Trent. And we mentioned, I don't know if we mentioned in each of the classes, we mentioned the Jesuits. The Jesuits were creation of St. Ignatius of Loyola. The goal of the Jesuits, and at least initially when they were first crafted and created by Ignatius of Loyola, who was a Catholic, Spanish Catholic priest, The goal was to go out and to preach the gospel all over the world, to convert as many people as possible, and to fight the Reformation in that way. That was their goal. They continue to play that role even today. Actually, they go and missionize to various parts of the world and try to bring people to Christianity. Okay, good. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. Sammy Voldarski wants a shout out. Okay. Hey, Sammy. I saw your mom today, I think, in Frisch. Today was open house, by the way, in Frisch. A lot of people, a lot of people in Frisch today. A whole bunch of eighth graders want to come to Frisch next year. A whole lot of them want to come. There were thousands of people in Frisch today. So it was a pretty wild day. Pretty wild day. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Oh, Eliana wants to know who's the live stream sponsored by. Well, tonight, just because it's crazy, there's coffee, of course, Nespresso coffee. In my mug, sponsored, which Jessica bought me a number of years ago. The mug says, "Go confidently in the direction of your dreams. Live the life you've imagined." Great stuff. Nespresso coffee with almond milk. And this evening, the live stream is sponsored by the letter Q. By the letter Q. You should all thank the letter Q for the sponsorship tonight. Okay. Okay, so a number of you asked questions about what you need to know about English history. We learned basically English history from Henry VIII all the way through the Glorious Revolution. So clearly, you need to know the basic narrative, basic structure of what happens of when it comes to Henry VIII. You don't need to memorize Henry VIII's wives. You need to know just, again, basic details. You don't need to know all of his wives, but you need to know Catherine of Aragon. She is important. Again, if you don't memorize each one, that's fine. I'm not going to ask you on the test list. Please list Henry VIII's wives and what they did and their dates and their and when they lived. To answer one of Sammy Voldarski's questions, Henry VII was Catholic. Henry VIII, remember, moves England to his new church. He creates, again, what he calls the Anglican Church. He does this in the attempt to, at least initially, divorce Catherine of Aragon because she didn't provide for him a son. We talked about the various succession acts that removed first Mary and then Elizabeth from the succession to the monarchy, and then finally the third succession act restored. And this was done basically by Catherine Parr, his last wife, Henry's last wife, restored Elizabeth and Mary, or Mary and Elizabeth, to the succession after Edward became king. We talked briefly about Edward VI. It was really Edward VI who brings England into the Protestant mold. Remember, Henry VIII's actual theology was very close to Catholicism. There weren't too many differences between the Anglican Church and the Catholic Church during Henry VIII's own life. It was his son, Edward VI, who really brings England into or creates really the Protestant Church in a totally new way, really breaking off from the Roman Catholic Church in a number of instances, basically removing all Catholic doctrine from the belief system in England, introducing a new book of prayer, the book of Common Prayer, then the second book of Common Prayer. This was Thomas Cranmer, the Archbishop of Canterbury, introducing these new ideas into the fray. And remember, we discussed Edward. We discussed the fact that Edward doesn't have a successor. We discussed Lady Jane Grey, who is queen for 9 days before she's killed. We talked about Mary. again, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about Mary. We spent some time talking about Elizabeth, the various changes she puts into place when it comes to bringing England back from the Catholic Church, from the move back to the Catholic Church, which Mary had enacted during her time. The Mary marries Philip of Spain, and this association between England and Spain will have repercussions for many years following. We talked about the various changes that Elizabeth puts into place, bringing England back into the Protestant Church, and allowing for some, again, a little Catholic practice into the Protestant Church by allowing some of the rituals, some of the actual objects to be kept in the Protestant Church. We talked about the question. One of the questions I saw was Elizabeth an absolute monarch? And she was an absolute monarch, though she did work with Parliament in passing the various pieces of legislation, the Act of Supremacy, passing these pieces of legislation back into, or passing these pieces of legislation into law. She does work with Parliament, but she is an absolute monarch, and then Parliament does not have control over, or does not exercise control over Elizabeth. But at the same time, they had a fairly good relationship with Elizabeth. You don't see the difficulties between monarch and Parliament during Elizabeth's time, like you see during the 17th century. And I think that's because Elizabeth had respect for the institution of Parliament. She works through Parliament. She doesn't she doesn't go over Parliament's head. She had respect for the institution. She had respect for what Parliament could and could not do. She turns to Parliament when Spain was threatening with the Armada. She turned to Parliament for the necessary funds in order to fight the Spanish and the Spanish Armada. And so, in that regard, she had tremendous respect for she had respect for Parliament. Again, this is something that we don't see in the 17th century. The 17th century is really very much, particularly the first half of the 17th century, is very much defined by the difficulties, the consternation between Parliament and the monarch. If you were to characterize, and this may be a question, maybe for the exam, if you were to characterize the nature of the relationship between monarch and Parliament in the 17th century, how would you characterize it? And there you have to look at the reigns of James I and Charles I, and you can sort of separate it between James I and Charles I, who openly pushed Parliament aside, particularly James I. We talked about when we read the James's view of Parliament, and view of the absolute monarchy in general. His view that the absolute monarch was a monarch because God had chosen him to be a monarch. He believed in the notion, the idea that monarchy was from God, was from heaven. He believed that the monarch has absolute power, that Parliament simply exists as to consult the king, to give him advice, but the king has tremendous power over. The king has all power over Parliament. The king has the power to make the laws, to keep the laws. He doesn't have to keep the laws, but he does so in order to show a good example for his people. So again, the characteristics of the first half of the 17th century when it comes to monarch and Parliament is very bad. In regards to Charles rules during the years of personal rule without Parliament. He pushes Parliament to the side, attempts to rule without him. And by the time he brings them back in 1640, in order to put down the Scottish rebellion, Parliament basically reacts in a natural way by telling him, look, if you're going to shut us out, we're going to do everything we can to push you aside, leading, of course, to the English Civil War and leading to the rise of Oliver Cromwell and the negation of the English monarchy for the period of Cromwell's rule. When we get to 1660 and the restoration of the monarchy, we can begin to see the development of the different kinds of the different kinds of perspective between Parliament and the king, where Parliament is more assertive, more dominant, when the king is attempting to offer some liberal, when the king particularly Charles II is trying to liberalize more some religious laws. Parliament is asserting its authority. Parliament has the upper hand, and of course, this is manifest clearly in the Glorious Revolution with William and Mary and the English Bill of Rights. Now, when it comes to knowing what the English Bill of Rights says, and as a whole, knowing what the primary sources say, um, you don't need to know, and you shouldn't be expected to memorize the primary sources, but you need to know the broad details of what the primary sources say. And so, particularly for the age class, if I'm asking a question that involves discussing the English Bill of Rights, you should be able to mention at least 2 or 3 of the rights in the English Bill of Rights. If we're talking about the Petition of Right, then you should mention 1 or 2 specific elements that the Petition of Right discusses. You are expected to be able to speak about these issues in a way that makes it seem that you understand what these topics are all about. Okay, let's see. So in regards to the honors class, you had a reading on the scientific revolution and the A class. We're not going over the scientific revolution. The expectation is you're going to know what's in the textbook, and that's it. I'm not going to ask you anything else. And this is also in regards to the review sheet itself. This is what I said in class. If the topic doesn't appear on the review sheets, and the first topic that we did this year does not appear on the review sheet, meaning the lengthy introduction when we talked about the Renaissance, we talked about the various isms, we talked about the Northern Renaissance, that's not on the test. I'm not going to ask you directly about those topics. The questions may, and the questions on, let's say, the Protestant Reformation may refer sort of to these ideas vaguely, but you're not expected to rehash all of the details that we discussed. Not rehash all the details that you discussed in the that we discussed in the first, when we did that first topic. So that's, I think, just a useful piece of information. Okay, let's look at more questions here. Let's see. I'm just trying to go through some of the questions here. Okay, we went through that. Let's see. We went through some of that. Good. I'm just going through some of these questions here. Let's see. What does this email say? Okay, so again, this is from a question from Alana. Again, she asked what we need to know about the scientific revolution, what we need to know about the Enlightenment. What you need to know about the Enlightenments is what you find in the textbook and what we do in class. We'll be learning Monday. We'll be learning Tuesday. We should be able to get through almost everything that we need to get through. Clearly, if we don't, then it's not going to be on the exam. I've already removed a couple of the primary sources from the review sheet because we're just not going to get to them, and you're not going to be expected to know what they have to say. And so in regards to the scientific revolution, what you're only expected to know from the scientific revolution is what appears in the textbook. Now, I may ask you, based on that information, how do you think it relates to something else, whether it's the Enlightenment, whether it's something beforehand. That's fine, but the details that you provide, I'm only expecting you to provide the details, some of the details from what you found in the textbook. Okay. Let's see. From Michal. By the way, Michal did a great job today at Open House. Michal gave, she represented the sophomore grade in giving a speech in front of the many hundreds, thousands of people at Open House today. She did a fantastic job, as did all of the speakers. They all did great jobs. Michal wants to know if somehow Hillary Clinton becomes the new president before Wednesday, can we all get a 100? I like to say yes, but in keeping with the nonpartisan tone of the class, I'm not going to give you an answer, Michal. But that's a good question. Um, Julia wants me to give out a shout. Wants me to give a shout out to Clem for the amazing pizza that he will make us while we study very hard. Jessica was copied because she likes Clem's pizza. Um, I do not eat Clem's pizza, largely because I just can't. Anyway, okay. Let's see. Looking at some more questions here. Do we need to know? This is from Chloe. Do we need to know the English Renaissance? The English Renaissance. Do you mean the English Reformation? Coffee. Yes, it's 8:30. I'm drinking fully caffeinated coffee, as I'm sure some of you are this week. I know a lot of you have a long week this week with an English essay tomorrow, with chemistry on Tuesday, and my exam on Wednesday. I want to actually reassure everybody. This goes for H and A, particularly for H, because I know I have said some things in class which have made some of you well, despondent in thinking about the test. The test is fair. The test isn't difficult. The test is, well, it's not overly difficult. If the exam that I gave to my 10 honors class in the first quarter of last year was a 10, we're ranked from 1 to 10, this is not going to be a 10. It's not going to be a 9.8, 9.7. It's a fair test that asks you to think about some of the material, I think, in interesting ways. I'm not out here to get you. I want everyone to succeed. I want everyone to do really, really, really well, and I think you can. And so you need to study, you need to prepare, you need to be ready. But I don't want you staying up until 3 o'clock in the morning the night before the exam studying. That's not healthy. Don't say we're gonna spend the 8 hours driving down to Slam on Thursday sleeping, because A, you're not, and B, it doesn't make up for the fact that you need to sleep. So anyway, let's see. Michal. Oh, so Michal, we're back. Okay. But anyway, I just want you to not to go overly crazy with this. You've had a lot of work to do. You will continue to have a lot of work to do. Tests are important, but they're not the end all be all. I don't want you to think that this is going to define what you're doing or where you are in class. Anyway, back to the questions. Okay. First from Mr. Cooper: to what degree do we need to know the opinion of philosophers during the Enlightenment? You need to know what we go over in class. You need to know what we discuss in class in regards to the various Enlightenment philosophers, what we have discussed in class, what we will discuss in class. In the honors class, you will be expected to know the difference, to be able to rehash what Kant said. This goes for the A. The Kant's goes to the A class also, but you'll need to know Kant. You need to know Mendelssohn. You need to know what we discussed in terms of Habermas, and to go through Habermas's to talk about Habermas's theory. You may need to apply Habermas's theory and to the various philosophers that we discuss over the coming days. So yeah. Wow. Okay. So that's what you should. That's what you need to know. And again, if it appears on the review sheet, that's fine. That's what you should know. And that's what you should focus on. Okay. This is from Joey. To elaborate on Cooper's point, the Post and CNN stated that this is the 5th time that presidential candidate has won the popular vote. Sorry to take off this topic. I found it very interesting that it contradicts what you said. Well, again, so this is not going. This is something that we had in class with with Aaron Cooper. They're right that this is the fifth time that a candidate won the popular votes. But again, you have to differentiate between winning the popular votes and winning the Electoral College, or whether this is the fifth time that a candidate will have won the popular votes and not won, or excuse me, have this is going to be the fifth time that a presidential candidate has won without the popular votes. This is the fourth time in which a candidate has won the Electoral College without the popular votes. And there was one other instance when there was no, and this was the election of 1824, where no candidates won the necessary majority of electoral votes, so it went to the House of Representatives, where the House of Representatives elected in 1824, elected John Quincy Adams. Thank you. Yes, thank you. And so that's what happened in 1824. And your wife's maiden name is Jessica Bartell, and class of 1998. Her name is Jessica Bartell. It is a good guess, Joey, but that is not correct. So good guess on the year. You're right on her name, and that shouldn't be hard to find because you know my name and you know her name is Jessica, so you can Google us and find us all over the place because we appear all over the internet. But it is not 1988, but that's a very good guess. You asked also about the Counter-Reformation thing again. Again, it's the council. Really, the focus is the Council of Trent, and the focus of the Council of Trent was really to reaffirm everything that the Catholic Church had previously thought of and kept as doctrine, thought of and kept of as the most important element to it. The Council of Trent reaffirmed everything that the Catholic Church had previously believed. The Catholic Church made no substantive changes to their system of beliefs in reaction to the Protestants. That's what the Council of Trent basically came away with. Oh, we have a winner here. Eliana is correct. Class of 2002, same grade as Rabbi Spear. That is absolutely correct. They were and they still are friends. So absolutely 2002. That was, by the way, just to give you guys a heads up. No, I'm not going to mention that. Don't worry. That will get mentioned at another time. That was just a fantastic grade at Frisch. Just like a fantastic grade. They were awesome. I was friends with a lot of them. I'm still friends with a lot of them. We are still friends with a lot of them. And so, you know, it was just a fantastic grade. Yeah, a lot of great people. But yes, 2002, and Rabbi Spear. We'll tell other stories about that grade on Sophomore Slam when my wife won't be there and she can't give me looks as I tell stories. So wait until Thursday, guys, because we'll go crazy with telling those stories. Yes, she does. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Let's go back to some of the questions here. Let's see what we have. Test announcement from Alana. Reminds everyone to go to sleep at a reasonable hour before the test so they don't get confused about the readings mid-test. Again, get some sleep, guys. I know this is a tough week. You guys, by Sunday, by the time you get back from Sophomore Slam, you guys are going to be dead. Between your tests this week, Sophomore Slam is nonstop. We're doing things every single day. We're doing things at nights. We're not going to get back to the hotel until midnight, 1 a.m. It's going to be intense. So try to get some sleep. I know it's going to be hard, but try to get some sleep. Okay, let's see. Ooh, Tamira brings something up here, which I'm not going to mention on the live stream, but she's absolutely right. So Tamira, you are absolutely right there. Okay. Can you say the stages of the war one more time because it wasn't so clear? I assume, Layla, you're referring to the the wars of religion. This is again for the not for the A class. This is for the H class. The four stages of the 30 Years' War, excuse me, are the Bohemian stage, which was really when the different principalities of the Holy Roman Empire were fighting each other, Protestant and Catholic. The Bohemian period was won by the Catholics, by the King of Bohemia, who was Catholic, and the goal was to recatholize parts of the Holy Roman Empire which had fallen to the Protestants. That was the first part. The second part was the Danish period, when the King of Denmark, with the encouragement of England, France, and the Netherlands, marched into the Holy Roman Empire and tried to take over, tried to reassert the Protestants, the existence of Protestantism and the continual rise of Protestantism in the Holy Roman Empire. He lost, and the Catholics won. The third period is the Swedish period, when the King of Sweden marched in. He was supported by France. He was supported by the Netherlands. They wanted to see, both France and the Netherlands wanted to see the weakening of the Holy Roman Empire, particularly the Habsburgs. Sweden was victorious against the Holy Roman Emperor, and against the Catholics. And finally, the final phase, the fourth phase, the Swedish Franco phase, when France openly joined the war in 1635, and the war lasts from 1635 to 1648. The final phase of the war lasts from 1635 to 1648. Basically, from 1635 to 1648, Germany is basically looted. It's basically just people are killed. Nearly a third of the population of the Holy Roman Empire was killed. Again, the 30 Years' War was a conflict between the Protestants and the Catholics in the Holy Roman Empire. There was a desire by by a number of the princes in the Holy Roman Empire to wipe away the gains that the Protestants had made in the second half of the 16th and first half of the 17th century. And this basically leads to conflict, leads to the four stages of conflicts. Okay. Okay. Let's go to some additional questions here. Okay. Let's see. This is from Serena. Can you please go over what exactly we need to know about Mary and Elizabeth? You need to know everything about everything. No. Okay. Mary and Elizabeth. Mary, we really didn't spend that much time talking about. We talked about Mary as a Catholic monarch, marrying Philip of Spain, another Catholic or a future Catholic monarch, the goal of unifying England and Spain. Mary, in becoming queen, remember, she recatholizes England, moves it away from the gains, the advances of Edward VI. She brings back the Catholic Church. She consciously prosecutes and persecutes Protestants in England. So that's that. Which Mary do you mean here, Serena? Do you mean Mary Tudor or Mary Queen of Scots? With Mary, we didn't mention Mary Queen of Scots before, but am I taking that inside? Thanks. So with Mary Queen of Scots, we mentioned that Mary comes to England because she's forced out of Scotland. She takes over in Scotland after the death of her father. She becomes Queen of Scotland. She's forced to leave Scotland. She comes to England, where she is perceived by Elizabeth to be a threat, largely because she is a former Catholic monarch with supporters, again, amongst Catholics in England, who very plausibly and possibly would want to overthrow Elizabeth and install Mary, Queen of Scots, as the Queen of England. Remember, she has legitimate rights to the throne of England through her grandmother and her grandfather, basically through and that was key. Through Henry VII, she lays claim to the throne of England. She's first put under house arrest, and then Elizabeth either finds a plot or she makes up a plot in which Mary was going to overthrow Elizabeth's government, and Elizabeth has her killed. Let's see. Okay, a question from, let's see. Sorry, just going through some questions here. Okay, I'm just going to go back a little bit to see if we can find more questions. Answer that questions. Okay, so a couple of questions here from Bailey. People were against 9-year-old. This is from Bailey. Thank you for the questions. If people were against 9-year-old Edward being king, why was there no change to the church doctrine? You're right in that Edward becomes king when he's 9 years old, but first of all, when he becomes king, he does have someone serving in his stead, and someone supporting him. But I don't really understand the relationship between the age and the church doctrine. Edward takes what his father had done and pushes it further. There was change to church doctrine, particularly under Edward, not under Henry VIII. What do we need to know about Sir Francis Drake in England versus Spain? Just that Sir Francis Drake led was an English explorer. He helped. He led the English against the Spanish Armada. That's basically what we mentioned. If the Anabaptists were pacifists and nonviolent, why did they attack Charles V's army? Not sure if that's part of the reading, but that's a very specific detail. I mean, they were attacked in Munster mostly, and they were attacking to basically survive, but they were eventually routed and they eventually killed. So I'm not sure if that was in the reading of the 30 Years' War, but that's a detail which is not particularly important. Okay. Question from Julia. I'm confused about England during the English Reformation and during the Absolute Rule. Is it actually the same? I mean, yes, I guess. I mean, the English Reformation is the period really of Henry VIII and Edward VI, and they are basically the same. I mean, they're basically the same. Absolute Rule though is a much broader discussion because it includes not only Henry VIII and Edward, but it includes rulers in the later part of the 16th and into the 17th century. So the English Reformation is really the shift from the Catholic Church to the Protestantism of the Anglican Church, first under Henry and then under Edward. Okay, we are going strong at 8:50, guys. This is fun. I don't know. I think we should do this like every night. Like, why not just do this every night, hang out like this? Let's see. Okay. Just going back into the emails here. I really wish they kept the Q&A app in the Google Hangout. It's really annoying that they didn't. Not really happy with this. All right, just opening up some questions here. Just curious. So this is from Ezra. Just curious if we're finishing the European Enlightenment information. Yeah, we did this already. Yes, we will. Again, if we don't finish it, then it's not going to be on the test. That's basically it, unless it appears in the textbook reading. If it appears in the textbook reading, you are responsible for it. But again, if you read it in a textbook, that's fine and good. If we don't do the associated primary source in class, you're not going to be responsible for the primary source in class. So, okay. Let's see. Other questions here. By the way, did any of you see the end of the Cowboys-Steelers game? I wasn't watching it, and then all of a sudden Twitter was going nuts, and I just turned it on for like the last 35 seconds. It was a crazy game. Crazy game. That's there. Let's see. Okay. In terms of the pages, again, the pages that you were responsible for in the textbook are on the review sheets. That's what you're responsible for from the various assignments that we've had, and that's what you have to read. If it's not on the review sheets, then you are not responsible for it. Where are all the textbook readings you need to know? They're on the review sheet. I think they're. Let me just pull the review sheet up. I'm pretty sure they're on the review sheet. Let's see. Logging on to Haiku. Let's see. Exam 1 review sheets. Yeah, they're in textbook pages. That's where they are. Meaning there's a section that says textbook pages, and that's what you were responsible for. These are the pages you had already read for class. So that's what you should be I mean, yeah, that's what you know. That's what you should be responsible for. That's what you read. Good. Okay. Let's tackle more questions here. A question from Rebecca that just came in. Do we have to know the readings in detail or just the main idea? Again, you don't need to know you don't need to know you don't need to know the details. You need to know, you need to be able to tell me the basic elements of what the primary source says. I'm not expecting you to quote verbatim from the source, but I'm expecting you to be able to talk about the source in a meaningful way, to be able to tell me if you're reading about Luther's critique of the church, of the Pope, or if you're reading James I's view on monarchy, to be able to speak for a couple of sentences, giving me a sense of what the source actually says. And that's what you need to be able to do. So if you're studying the sources, if you're studying the primary sources, you need to be able to think in your head, can I write for 4 or 5 sentences about this particular source? Again, I'm not going to ask you on the test, what does the source say about this specific issue? I may ask you to, for instance, as a question, talk about the issue of religious tolerance as it appears in England in the 17th century. I may ask you that. Or for the honors class, I may ask you to compare religious tolerance in England to France in the 17th century. I'm pretty sure that was part of your textbook reading. Let me check just to make sure that's correct. Yeah, I think it should be under the Louis XIV piece. So, so there, meaning religious tolerance, we talked about it in a number of contexts. You can mention something from the English Bill of Rights. There are a lot of ways to go there. And to mention and if you're going to mention a primary source in your answer, then you should be expected to at least give me a very minimal sense of what the source says in regards to 1 or 2 specifics concerning its meaning. So yeah. Okay. Let's see. Other questions. We were up to, I think, 34 viewers before, which is fantastic. And of course, this is going to go up on YouTube. And clearly, the expectation is this is going to do really, really well on YouTube. So let's see. Okay. Okay. A couple questions from Nava. Who's Philip II? Can you explain why he is killed? I mean, Philip II is married to Mary Queen of Scots. Excuse me, not to Mary Queen of Scots, to Mary Tudor. Again, it's with the execution by Elizabeth of Mary, Queen of Scots, that Philip decides at that point, he's Philip II of Spain, King of Spain. He's going to try to invade Spain, trying to put a Catholic on the to replace Elizabeth. Remember, Elizabeth, the Protestant monarch, with a Catholic monarch. Remember, he is married to Mary Tudor, Elizabeth's half sister, who is Catholic. If they would have had a child and they don't, and Mary dies fairly early in their marriage, that child would have been the next in line to the throne and a Catholic monarch. But Philip II sends the Spanish Armada to try to defeat the English, but the English emerge victorious over the Spanish Armada. So that's what we discussed in terms of Philip II. So that's one question that Nava sent in. The second question that Nava sent in, can you please explain what Immanuel Kant says about the Enlightenment? This is in regards, we did this for both classes. Remember, Immanuel Kant says, sapere aude, have the courage to use your own reason. Kant talks about the idea that he talks about the idea that people during the Enlightenment were able to use their reason, but they didn't use reason because they had the self-incurred tutelage, this inability to use their own reason, that they relied on other people, self-incurred, because, as Kant says, they were cowards, basically. And Kant says the motto of the Enlightenment is sapere aude, have the courage to use your own reason. That, he says, is the motto of the Enlightenment. Remember, Kant is writing 1784. He's writing looking back at what had transpired before him. So he's reflecting back on what the Enlightenment says, and that's important. Okay, and so that, I think that's basically what we said with Kant. We didn't go further into his into the primary source. That's what you should be focused on in regards to understanding Kant. An email from Joey. Hey, it's Joey Strobel again. By the way, Joe, you know when you send me an email, I can see that it's you, so you don't need to tell me that it's you in the email. But thank you. Can you give me a shout out, please, that I was the cougar at Hope and House today? Great job being the cougar. I actually didn't see you. I didn't make it down to the club fair in the gym. I had to teach. I was responsible for teaching a class to parents. It was a lot of fun. Got a lot of parents, and yeah. So I actually didn't make it downstairs to see you. But I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did a great job. Okay, question from Ariel and Ali Zimmerman. Can you please explain what Jürgen Habermas says about the public sphere? What does the NYU guy, Ariel being very specific here, the NYU guy meaning Jürgen Habermas. So this is something specifically for the H class. We talked, so not for the A class. We talked about Jürgen Habermas and his view of the Enlightenment, really as it correlates to the emergence of the public sphere. That's what he discusses. We discuss the fact that Habermas sort of looks at the historical developments of what he calls the public sphere. In this regard, what the public sphere is in his argument is this move from representational culture, which defines medieval and parts of early modern Europe. Representational culture for Habermas is really manifest most clearly in Louis XIV's Palace of Versailles, where the goal was for the monarch to represent himself to the people of his kingdom in every single way possible, that everyone knew who the monarch was, everyone knew that the monarch was all-powerful, that the state was engaged and involved in all aspects of your life. And he moves this from, and what Habermas says is we slowly begin to see the emergence of this public sphere, where people, particularly people of middle class, begin to engage in discussion, begin to engage in conversation, begin to go to places like the coffee house, begin to write in newspapers and journals, go to salons, and discuss the various developments that begin to appear during the age of enlightenment. And it's this public sphere that Habermas sees as really the way in which the Enlightenment is able to grow. This public sphere outside of the boundaries of the authority of the states. The king, the monarch, doesn't have the power um, of control over the public sphere like he did in every other aspect of life before the emergence of the public sphere. But it's the public sphere itself that allows for the growth of the Enlightenment. And Habermas says that without this growth, the Enlightenment will not have expanded in the way that it did. The ideas will not have been diffused to various parts of the public. People wouldn't have been able to engage in these ideas. Arguably, in his mind, the important developments that take place after the Enlightenment, such as the American and the French Revolution, may not have actually been able to take place without the creation, the emergence of the public sphere. That's basically what Habermas says here. Okay. Let's see. I'll come back to this in a question. Let's see. This is from Rebecca. From Rebecca Smith. We have to know all the different kings and queens that kept on taking over in detail. If not, what do we have to know? Again, you have to know their major accomplishments, what they did, and again, to think about it in broad terms. Think about it in broad strokes. Again, look at, and this sort of gets to a question that Julia asked about how to study for this. There is just so much material, and I just don't know where to start. Start at the beginning. A long, long time ago in a faraway place lived a guy. It's a great place to start. But seriously, what you should be doing as you're going through this material is looking for patterns, looking for ways to characterize the material. Again, look at it. You want to look at it from both a macro perspective, meaning a broad perspective, and a little bit in a micro, in a more specific perspective. When you're looking at the Reformation, for instance, and the various manifestations of the Reformation, whether it's in the Holy Roman Empire, whether it is in England, whether it's in Switzerland, whether it's in whether it's Zwingli, whether it's Calvin, look for broad themes. Think about the ways in which Calvin, Zwingli, all relate to each other. Are they similar? Are they different? Is the Reformation in England different from the Reformation in the Holy Roman Empire? Why? What's the difference? And begin to ask yourself those kinds of questions. Begin to think about, and this goes for both H and A. Think about, if I were to compare the Reformation in England to the Reformation in the Holy Roman Empire, if I were to compare the Reformation in Switzerland to the Holy Roman Empire, what are the similarities? What are the differences? What are the changes? What affects what? Is there causation? When you're looking at England in the 17th century, is England in the 17th century different from England in the 16th century? Is England in the first part of the 17th century different from England in the different part of the 17th century? That's what you're looking for. You're looking for broad characteristics, broad strokes, broad ideas. Is the monarchy of James II and Charles II really different from the monarchy of James I and Charles I? Why? And if it isn't different, then why? Those are the themes. Those are the ideas that you want to be focusing on. I would say there's a good amount of material on the exam. I don't think it's overbearing in that. Again, I'm not interested whether you can memorize dates. I don't care if you can memorize dates. Memorization is one skill. It's a skill that I don't particularly have. It's a skill that some of you may have, and that's fine. But I'm not interested in seeing the fact that you can memorize everything and rehash it on an exam. You can memorize every single fact. And this is I think this is very, very clear. You can memorize every single fact, every single detail that we've said over the course of the first couple of months of school, and you can still do terribly on the exam. If you don't answer the question, then you're not going to do well on the exam, and I think that's really, really important. So you have to answer the question. That's very, very important. Okay. Okay. Ooh, I gotta do that tonight too. A lot of stuff to do tonight. It's gonna be a long night, guys. It's gonna be a long night. Okay. Christopher Milano. What period is Sir Francis Drake from? What section was he a part of? Elizabeth the First. Elizabeth the First. Cheers, everybody. It's seltzer. Ooh. You guys are getting a first hands look into my beverage choice tonight. Yes, coffee at 9 o'clock at night. Totally the way to go. Absolutely the way to go. It's going to be a long week, guys. Okay. Let's see. Question from Addison. Do we need to know about John Merriman, Jean Bodin, Thomas Hobbes, Jacques Pousset's absolutism? So, for the honors class, yes, you have to know Merriman's four-pronged argument in regards to the nature of absolutism. Again, this goes for the honors class, not for the A-level class. Remember, John Merriman has this four-pronged thesis concerning the characteristics of absolute rule, the relationship between monarchs and nobles. Remember, the relationship between ruler and nobles determines the form of absolutism. In an absolute state, the monarch expands state structures. Remember, the structures of state, so it sort of pushes authority in all different elements and in all different ways. Absolute states are characterized by a large standing army, and an alliance with the church is the fourth element of Merriman's thesis. Again, that goes for the H class. And Bodin, Hobbes, and Jacques Pousset, we just had basically a short one line on each of them. This goes for both the H and the A. Bodin, 16th century France, Hobbes, 17th century England, and Jacques Pousset, 18th or 17th century France. Bodin, each of these three conceive of a theory of absolutism. Bodin, the ruler is a father figure. That's actually something that we see emerge in James I's thinking. Hobbes argues that absolutism can prevent society from lapsing into a state of war. Hobbes is a strong believer in strong monarchy, and Jacques Pousset, kings rule by divine right, by the will of God. So that goes for the H and the A, and we talked about that again briefly, not in tremendous detail in class. Okay, good stuff, guys, so far. Good stuff. A lot of fun questions coming in. Getting some, getting stuff on a group chat with a bunch of teachers from Frisch. Let's see what they have to say here. Ooh, fun stuff. Good stuff here. Okay. Question on the reading. No, sorry, not answering question on the reading. I'm not addressing questions on the reading. The reading is there for you to enjoy in every way, shape, or form. I'm sure you will all do very well with the reading part. Remember, you get the reading on the test. You will not, I repeat, not be able to bring the reading that you that you are working on at home with your notes. You cannot bring that to the exam. I'm not going to be answering questions about the reading. You are on your own with the reading. Okay. Can you go over? This is from Layla. Can you go over what we need to know about the scientific Reformation? I assume you mean the scientific revolution. Whatever's in the textbook, meaning the details in the textbook are what you need to know. And I'm leaving that up for you guys. Okay. A question from Tamira. If Parliament was so opposed to Charles' stance on allowing Protestantism, why did they allow Mary and William to take over if they were Protestants? No, Parliament was opposed to allowing rights to Catholics, not the Protestants. Parliament did not want to see Charles II or James II give religious freedoms to, or really it was Charles II, religious freedoms to Catholics. Even though he attempts to give them greater freedom, even though he attempts to limit, tries to do away with any laws in the books, tries to give them free reign or free practice of religion. Parliament passes the Test Act, which required all public officials to swear an oath against the Catholic Church. It was Catholics who they were afraid of serving, not Protestants. That's the whole point. Meaning, Charles II converts to the Catholic Church on his deathbed. James II was a Catholic monarch. Parliament did not want the continuation of Catholics to serve on the throne of England, and that's why they invite William and Mary as the co-regents, as the co-monarch, of Frisch. So. Another email from Joey. Fun fact, my brother was the junior year of the seniors lost. Sure, yeah, it's in our family, but we never lose. Okay, that's fantastic. Great job. Okay. All right. Let's go back. Let's see these questions. Oh, I am tired, guys. Tired. Tonight I'm going to be spending time after this grading papers, finishing up on some stuff for this week. A lot of fun stuff, guys. Okay. Other questions here. This is from Michal. Do you mind going over the Succession Act and the whole deal? We went through the various Succession Acts before. Briefly, the first Succession Act removed Mary from the line of succession after Henry VIII was divorced from Catherine of Aragon. So that was the first Succession Act, and yeah. So the second Succession Act was after Anne Boleyn was beheaded and removed Elizabeth from the line of succession, and Catherine Parr helps or pushes Henry to pass the third Succession Act, which restores both Mary and Elizabeth to the line of succession only after Edward VI died. If he died without a child, then both Mary and Elizabeth would be in the line for succession. Layla says we never had a reading on the scientific revolution. That was the reading that you had. You did have a reading on the scientific revolution. It was, I believe, last week. Okay. Are we done learning for the tests? From Tamir. We are never done learning for the test. We will always learn for the test. No, we're going to be doing materials tomorrow on the Enlightenment in class, and you will be responsible for that, and probably on Tuesday also. So that's what we will be doing. Yeah, we're going to go up to the test date. That's right. So it's going to be fresh in your minds. This is from Kaylee. Kaylee, I hope you're not freaking out about the exam. Don't freak out. It's going to be fine. You're going to do great. Just breathe. You're going to do really well on it. Will we have the individual reading on the test? The reading that I put up on Haiku, yeah, you'll have that reading on the test. So yes, you will. You're not expected to memorize the reading. The reading that I put up on Haiku that you have to prepare, you will get the same exact copy on the test. Not the copy that you're using at home, but I will photocopy for everyone a clean copy so you have it on the exam. That's only fair. Okay. Let's see. Let's see. From Tamira, there's no way there is no way I am not going to stay up until 3 a.m. the morning the day before the test. Maybe we should do another Google Hangout, like at, I don't know, 1 in the morning on Wednesday morning when everyone is up studying, and we'll just do like a late night 1 a.m. I don't know, a late night 1 a.m. Google Hangout. I think that's a great idea. No, we're absolutely not going to do that. Absolutely not. Let's see. From Nina, if James II could just add another tax to pay for the war, why could he just do that to pay for a Scottish rebellion instead of recalling Parliament? I mean, so first of all, you're referring to James. I think you're talking about Charles the First. Could just add another tax to pay for the war, meaning that was the point. You're asking why didn't he just do what he did before Petition of Right? He could have, I guess, but meaning meaning he could have just done it on his own. I guess he could have just asserted himself as the absolute monarch. I guess he did, but the rebellion was large enough in that he needed Parliament's ability to raise an army. I guess he could have, in theory. He didn't. So that's my best answer for you. Yeah. Okay. Another question here from Tamira. We still have 22 viewers, guys. That's great. It's fantastic. I know a lot of you are studying for other tests. I know, whether you have, I think you guys have an English, some of you have an English essay. Some of you have, all of you have chem on Tuesday. It's tough. Chem and history in the same week. It's tough. Chem's tough. Sorry, guys. Can you explain the Catholic Counter-Reformation that followed the English Reformation? We talked about the Catholic Counter-Reformation before, the Council of Trent. That's what we said before. Can you please explain the causes and events of the 30 Years' War? Again, the causes of the 30 Years' War really is the fact that the Holy Roman Empire continues to be split along religious lines between Catholicism and Protestantism. The Peace of Augsburg, as we've all talked about, the Peace of Augsburg established the continual, or the allowance for, Protestantism and Catholicism in the Holy Roman Empire, but this religious split still continued to exist and still continued to manifest. That being said, the events of the 30 Years' War, again, we talked about the 4 different stages. I'm not going to, again, just to go very briefly again, the four stages of the war: the Bohemian period, the Danish period, the Swedish period, and the Swedish Franco phase. Again, the religious division of the Holy Roman Empire between Protestants and Catholics, not just Lutherans, by the way, but also Calvinists. Calvinists were able to establish a stronghold for themselves in the Holy Roman Empire, and it's in one part of the Holy Roman Empire, the Palatinate, where they're able to establish themselves. They're able to gain acceptance in the Holy Roman Empire. So again, the Holy Roman Empire is a religious struggle, and the 4 periods we mentioned before, where the first 2 the Catholics win, the second 2 the Protestants win, and yeah, that's basically how it ends up. Good. Okay. I am getting tired, guys. I don't know about you guys. I am tired. Okay. Let's see. Let's go back and look at the questions here. A lot of questions here that we answered. Oh, let's see. How am I doing this coffee here? Almost done. Uh-oh. I may have to make more coffee. Maybe brew some espressos. I don't know. All right. I mean, we don't seem to be getting additional questions now. So we'll wait a couple of minutes, and if we don't get any additional questions, then we can, shut it down. We've been on air for an hour and 20 minutes now. Still going strong. Do this like a whole night thing. Get other teachers to do this. Just do a whole night of Google Hangouts. Maybe for finals. Maybe we should do that. Yeah, maybe we should do just that. I think that's a great thing. It'd be interesting. Tamira, who is Habermas? It's not Habermas. It's Habermas. Jürgen Habermas. He's the guy that we talked about. I went through his thesis before. We talked about it in class last week. That's who he is. Jürgen Habermas, the NYU professor whose class I sat in and didn't understand a thing. This is from Mandy. Can you go over James I and his ideas? We talked about before his ideas of monarchy. He argues that the king is the absolute monarch, meaning parliaments can only offer him advice. Parliaments cannot dictate what the king should do. The king can take parliament's advice or ignore parliament. The king makes the laws. The king is the law. The king has the decision to kill and not kill. The king has the decision makes the decisions whether laws go into effect or not. And he also talks about the fact that the king doesn't have to adhere to the law. That the king only listens. Excuse me. The king only adheres to the law because he's setting a good example for his people. Not because he has to, but because that's because he should. Chloe wants to know if I can tell everyone to open up the class haiku page. Everyone, please open the class haiku page. Open whatever page you want to. Michal, would you like to enlighten us about the Test Act and what it limited? We talked about the Test Act in regards to James Charles II. The Test Act was a response to the desire by Charles II to tolerate Catholics. He issues the Declaration of Indulgence, suspending all laws against Catholics and non-Anglican Protestants. Parliament does not like this. Parliament doesn't want there to be free, open religion for Catholics, and so Parliament passes the Test Act, which required all public servants, whether you were in government or whether you were in the army, to swear an oath against the Catholic Church. That's what the Test Act was. The Test Act continued through James II. James II is able to repeal the Test Act and allowed free worship for everyone in England. And that leads to eventually, 3 years later, the Glorious Revolution. Tamira wants to know if it's okay if she fails the test. It's fine. Yeah, if you fail the test, it's fine. It's not a problem. I mean, yeah, if you fail, you fail. Like if I get a 45 or something, yeah, you fail the test. Not a big deal. If you fail, you fail. Okay, question from Nina. Can you explain the division in Parliament during the Long Parliament? We talked about the fact that Parliament was divided along religious lines. We have in one quarter what we would call the religious conservatives, which the religious conservatives are basically those who are Anglicans. They continue to believe in the Anglican Church. They believe the Anglican Church was fine. There was nothing wrong with it. And then there were the Puritans. The Puritans wanted to purify the Church of England, to get rid of what they thought were the Catholic practices. They maintained that the Church of England was only partially reformed. And the Puritans wanted even to get rid of the Puritans were very much thought that the English Church was not purified in a necessary way, and that was the religious divide. But again, the religious divide in Parliament during the Long Parliament is not the only divide. Again, part of the divide also exists between those in Parliament who supported the king and those who did not support the king. The king had very little support in Parliament itself. Parliament on the whole stood against the king, particularly when Charles invades Parliament. And this leads, of course, to the House of Commons passing the militia ordinance, giving them the ability to raise an army and the ability to declare war on the king. Let's see. Question from Shoshana Distenfeld. What would you do if you were an absolute monarch? It's a great question. I don't know. What would I do if I were an absolute monarch? I don't know. If I were an absolute monarch, I really don't know. It's a great question. I don't know. I mean, I think if I were an absolute monarch, I think I would ask that the government reverts to democracy, just because I just don't believe that absolute monarchies are successful in any way, shape, or form. So I don't know. If I were an idealist, that's what I'd like to do. If I had total and complete power, who knows? Perhaps I would require everyone just to learn history and not to learn math or science or anything like that, just to learn history. I guess that'd be a problem because then we really wouldn't have any doctors, which is kind of necessary and important. Okay, but really good question. A question from Mandy: could you go over transubstantiation and consubstantiation? Sure. So we talked about this in a number of different instances. And this is something really that the H students need to know, not particularly for the A students. Transubstantiation and consubstantiation have to do with the different meanings of the Eucharist, of the wafer and the wine. The Catholic Church believes in transubstantiation, that when the wafer and the wine are blessed by the priest during Mass, they actually become the body and the blood of Christ. And so you are ingesting the body and the blood of Christ. This is again, one definition of the Eucharist. This is the definition that the Catholic Church believes in. This is the definition that the Lutherans also believe in. Consubstantiation means that the wafer and the wine don't actually become the body and the blood of Christ, but they only represent the body and the blood of Christ. This is the idea that Zwingli develops. This is largely why Zwingli and Luther were not able to create a uniform reforms movement. The issue of this is also part of the Test Act, transubstantiation and consubstantiation. Under the Test Act, Parliament's required that all public officials take an oath against transubstantiation, meaning against the Catholic Church. That's the basic meaning of transubstantiation and consubstantiation. Okay, Tamira, building on Shoshana's question, what if you were Lord Protector of England? I just like the title Lord Protector. I wouldn't need anything. I like the title Lord Protector. It just sounds very cool. Again, I mean, this goes back to what I said in class. I think there's some fantastic titles that have been used before. President is fine. I don't think it's great. I think Lord Protector is a great title. Supreme Allied Commander, NATO Forces. That's the individual who is the head of the military elements of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which we'll talk about during the fourth quarter. I think that's a fantastic title. I don't know. So president, king, fine. Emperor, okay. Those are all fine titles. I just like those titles better. That's just me. So yeah, we'll talk about NATO later on this year. And we've got some great stuff planned for you guys this year for the rest of the year. Some of which we did last year. We're going to be introducing, I think, some new stuff, particularly when it comes to that fourth quarter project, that big museum project. It's great. I think it's a lot of fun. Last year was tremendously successful on the first time we ran it. I think this year we're going to do some other things, which I think will be even greater. Rabbi Senior loved it last year, and so I think we're going to do some even better stuff with it. Mandy asked, would you like to review the Schmalkadic League? Yeah, I would. I love the Schmalkadic League. The Schmalkadic League is fantastic. I love the Schmalkadic League. I wish they weren't destroyed by Charles V back in the 16th century. So absolutely love it. Love the Schmalkadic League. If I called you Lord Protector or that other Supreme Leader thing that you said, can I get a 100? No, sorry. Good question, but no, that's not going to work. Yeah, sorry. Okay, I think, guys, we're going to end this here. It's 9:30. We've been doing this for an hour and a half. And while the questions that are coming in now are fantastically interesting, I think at this point we're losing the contents of what's going on. So I think we'll end it. I just want to reiterate, guys, the point of the test isn't to make you guys crazy. It's not. Tests count as 30% of the grade, but as do in-class assignments, as do the other work you've been doing. For all of the classes, it's important for you guys to review the material, and that's why we're having the exam, because a lot of the ideas, not so much the specific details, but a lot of the ideas that we've discussed are going to come back and back and back and back, and it's important that you review it, and that's why we have, in a way, that's why we have the exam, we have the test. I want everyone to succeed. I want everyone to do really well. That's what I'm looking for. And I think you guys can do really, really well on the test. I'm not going to, the test isn't there to get you. The test is there to make you crazy. I know some of you are going to drive yourselves crazy over the next couple of days. And I get it. I understand it. It's sort of part of the culture of Frisch to, to test crazy culture where doing the tests you think is getting and doing well in the test is everything and anything. It's a little problematic, and it's something I think we're thinking about and trying to change. But anyway, with that, guys, I think we will wrap this up. So thank you for everyone who participated. I had a fun time. Always fun to get your questions like this. And I think this was more useful than anything that we could do in class, simply because we just had, we've been doing this for 90 minutes, basically double the amount of time that we would have done this in, more than double the amount of time we did this in class. So get some rest tonight, guys. Try to go to sleep early, and I will see all of you in class tomorrow. Have a great night, guys. Bye-bye.